A very good morning and welcome to Media Monitor, the show that monitors and evaluates media coverage of leading stories of the week and puts the media in the spotlight. I am your host, Alicia Jali. We are live right here on SABC News on Channel 44 for all local and all global news. In our lineup today, we start by discussing today's newspaper headlines as well as the coverage of the deadly Ebola virus. We're going to cover the commemoration of the Marikana massacre, the spy tapes case, and lastly, the Bansi Tlakula's court ruling. Now to give us analysis on the coverage of these stories, let's welcome Dr. Felicity Coughlin, Director of the Independent Institute of Education, as well as Nozinto Bimia, who will be joining us. She's an SABC reporter, and of course, to give us insight on the Ebola story, we are very proud to have with us in studio Professor Lucille Bloomberg, who's a Deputy Director at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. And from our Durban studios, we are joined by Ms. Vera Vington-Sami, owner of Media Link, and of course on the line we will be joined by Sarah Kimani, an SABC East Africa correspondent. Remember, you can call us to give us insight on the stories that you think deserve to be covered by the media, but of course we're omitted on the following numbers: +2 711 714 6847, 714 6843, 714 6857. Show views and comments on Twitter as well at SA Media Monitor, as well as on Facebook Media Monitor. Very good morning to you. All right, now, before we go into discussion with the stories that made headlines throughout the week, we'd like to extend our sincere condolences to Mario Oriani Ambrosini's family. Ambrosini, who was a member of the Inkatha Freedom Party, has passed away at his home in Cape Town after a year-long battle with cancer. Panel, a very good morning to you. It's Women's Month. I have an all-women panel. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's start with you, Professor. What is in your news headlines this morning? Well,
since it's Women's Month, I think it's important to highlight areas where women are involved. So I think it was the Sunday Independent, the human face of Ebola, showing mothers and wives of Ebola victims. And I think a very balanced account of what the real needs are in the Ebola outbreak without sensationalism. I think that was the Sunday Independent. Then a very interesting and important article in Mail and Guardian on food security, and that women could feed the world if we let them. And I think there's lots of truth about there and some lovely stories about women who've really done well.
All right.
And then I guess because it's been quite a stressful time, I have to say I first go to the Sunday Times Food Weekly for my daily, my weekly interest in food satisfaction.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Professor, for that. Doctor, what is in your news headlines today?
I think for me, what I've been looking for all week is some kind of answers that simplifies the he said, she said, they did type of week that we've had. Everything from Marikana through to the IEC, everything is about who's lying and who's lying most. So the column in today's Independent, looking at the whole spy tape saga and that brilliant statement from the justice, and that if they tapes say what she said they did, he's home free. If not, there's a problem. I think for me, it's wonderful to see such a succinct statement at last about it is or it isn't.
All right. Thank you so much, Doctor, for that. Let's go to Durban. Vera, what is making headlines out in Durban?
All right. Hi, Alicia. It's so good to be on the show. What's making headlines in the Sunday Tribune today is the story about the Guptagate scandal. Demoted after taking the blame for Guptagate, Bruce Kolani gets the top post, and that's making our headlines here in Durban. He obviously is from Pietermaritzburg, so it is kind of a local story here. And obviously the article goes on to say that he has got this position. It has not been confirmed as yet, but he did have a farewell party, which was actually being explained in that article today. Also, obviously, Sunday Times here with a very interesting headline this morning, which is obviously about the African Bank and about the poor. It's really a shocking story, really, this morning about African Bank and obviously the lack of accountability Also, remembering Marikana, that's also the headline here, and obviously commemorations for the anniversary, which was obviously yesterday. So that's also making headlines here in Durban.
All right. Well, thank you so much. That's Vera out in Durban, and she'll be with us throughout the show. But now let's take a look at our top story this morning. Health Minister Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi has emphasized that South Africa has not had any Ebola case. Now, this follows after a Guinean woman suspected of having the virus tested negative at the Rahima Musa Hospital. Let's take a look at this clip.
And on admission, yes, it was confirmed that her temperature is 39 degrees. She had no other symptom or sign related to Ebola.
All right. Now, panel, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. There is Nozintombi Mia, our reporter, finally joining us in studio. Now, let's start by looking at this. How is the media coverage of this Ebola saga? Let's start with you, Nozintombi.
Well, a very good morning to you, Alicia, and your panel. Thank you so much for having me. I think that we as the media need to be extremely careful how we cover the Ebola virus issue. We can't be seen to be too alarmists, but at the same time, we can't be seen to be too lax in how we are covering it. So it's a very fine line that we are treading. I mean, we do know that in South Africa, there isn't yet a case that's been recorded of Ebola. So we don't want people to start panicking, and anybody that has a slight fever or is flushed will go to the nearest hospital, and our hospitals who are already under-resourced and understaffed will be dealing with that. So we have to be extremely careful in how we cover that particular Ebola virus situation in South Africa.
Doctor, what has been your take on the media coverage around this whole Ebola saga?
Well, that doctor.
Yes, doctor. Doctor and the professor. We'll get to you in a moment, Professor.
For me, I think what happened in the middle of the week with the scare story is perhaps most concerning, because I think it is important that the public are informed. It's important that we understand. It's important that we get very clear messages on the fact that there has been an inadequate international health response in prior outbreaks, and it's not taken seriously, and the issues of the poor. But what worried me was about, we almost seem to be sitting on the edge, almost wishing for one case here for the story. And the incident in the middle of the week was quite disturbing, because it was almost an at last it's happened. Whereas obviously what we want is for it not to happen here at all, and to stop happening in the rest of the continent.
Now, Professor, I've got very specialized questions for you. Now, briefly explain to us what this virus is, and what must people do if they suspect any case of it?
Well, it's one of the hemorrhagic fever viruses. The outbreak is confined really to West Africa at the moment. There is a low risk to importation of Ebola into South Africa. I think we have many measures in place. I think the focus really needs to be on the outbreak and how to respond to it adequately to stop it in West Africa.
But that's exactly what I want to know, Doctor. Let's be honest. Just how prepared are we as a nation should we have a case in the country, for example?
Well, I think the suspected case, or what was called a suspected case this week, really highlights, I think, a high level of awareness. This lady did come from Liberia, where the outbreak is obviously out of control. I think all the right things were done. We didn't seriously think it was a high risk. We did the testing to really give some confidence to healthcare workers who were likely to be involved in having to deliver the baby later in the day. And then things really got out of hand. But we get quite a number of requests, and in fact, at the moment, everything with fever that's come from Africa gets out into the media as peri-Ebola, and it's trying to balance that, giving information and not creating panic.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, this is the panic that we're talking about. Vera, is it better for us to be safe than sorry? What do you think?
Yes, obviously, Alicia, it is better to be safe. And I think one of the things that, obviously I'm talking about the media here, is that their role is really to be informative and to be educating the public, and not obviously to sensationalize the disease. I think from government, the communication has been good. However, it has been more reactive than proactive. I think from the public point of view, we would really like to be communicated in terms of knowing what our safety standards are. Are our hospitals ready? Are we adequately prepared for this disease? We know that it is absolutely, it's such a dreadful disease. We know that, currently we have social media, and a lot of people get pulled into this, believing that everything that you read on social media is actually true. And we saw this during the week where there were numerous rumors here, even in KZN, that our ports, that there were people in containers, in our ports that were actually ill. So, and that's when obviously the communication came from the Ports Authority, then from the airports companies saying that we do have measures. But I think the public also needs to know that we are prepared, that we have safety standards, and I think they have reacted to it. But there's also the issue of illegal immigrants that cross the borders.
All right,
and,
Vera, we're going to continue.
That for me is a huge issue.
All right, Vera, we're going to continue talking about this. Ladies, when we return, we're going to continue with the Ebola media coverage. Join the conversation by calling us on +2 711 714 6843, 714 6847 and 714 6857, and let us know which stories anywhere you are you feel were not adequately covered by the media. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor and like our Facebook page, Media Monitor. Don't go anywhere.
Zoom into Africa. This is Ethiopia. The Prime Minister is Mr. Haile Mariam Desalegn. Ethiopia is Africa's oldest independent country. It was never colonized. The population is more than 80 million people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit, birr.
Jessica the hippo was found after she was washed down the river shortly after birth. Today, she is a large hippo and still returns for feeding and human interaction.
She also loves body exfoliating. Yes, she has a mask as well.
Jessica is the world's most famous hippo, and perhaps she's the only one who has forgotten how aggressive she's supposed to be.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You can also be part of our discussion by calling us and tweeting us. You can ask your questions too via our Twitter account at SA Media Monitor, and our panel can hopefully give you some answers. Now, to continue with our discussion, Kenya has been labeled by the World Health Organization as a high-risk country for the spread of the Ebola virus. The situation is more dire in other African countries such as Liberia. On the line, we will be joined by SABC reporter in Kenya, Sarah Kimani. But let's take a quick look at this insert.
The situation in Liberia right now, we are having about 300 plus deaths total. Now, recently we had an escalation of 25 deaths. The corpses are on the road, they are lying down. We do not have the basic facilities, no equipment, protective gears to really go out and collect these corpses that are being lying down in the streets.
There is therefore heavy human traffic between the affected countries and Kenya. Hence the need for enhanced preparedness for prevention of possible introduction of the virus into the country and early detection and response.
Let's now welcome on the line Sarah Kimani, SABC East Africa correspondent. Sarah, a very good morning to you and thank you for joining us. Please give us the scope now. The Kenyan government said the country is ready, but the health authorities say another thing. Is Kenya equipped and ready to deal with the Ebola virus?
Well, we've been to an isolation center and it looks pretty good with 30 beds, and we saw some of the medics who have been trained. And the Kenyan government says so far it has trained 100, and in the next 3 weeks they should have at least 300 medics who can be able to deal with the virus if in case it gets into the country. But a lot has changed since that announcement, and now Kenya Airways has temporarily suspended its flight to and from Sierra Leone and Liberia. And the Kenyan government also says that its borders are closed for residents of Guinea, Liberia and Sierra Leone beginning Monday. Residents from those countries will not be allowed into the country. Kenyans who are coming into the country from those countries will be isolated for 21 days, where they will be checked to see if any of them may bring the virus into the country.
All right. Now, Sarah, is the Kenyan government working closely with the media to deliver absolutely vital info to the public? How is the word getting around? Are the Kenyans taking any precautions?
In fact, I think the Kenyan people, especially on social media, were ahead of the government because they are the ones who started complaining and putting a lot of pressure on the government to insist that Kenya Airways stopped its flight. Initially, the Kenyan government was very quiet. And so when that pressure started piling on social media, the mainstream media picked up the story. And from there now, the Ministry of Health and Kenya Airways have been having regular updates. Of course, the last update now being Kenya Airways cancelling the flight, and the Ministry of Health saying its borders are closed.
Thank you so much. That's Sarah Kimani, SABC East Africa correspondent, with us on the line from Nairobi, Kenya, sharing points on how Kenya is actually dealing with the threat of a possible outbreak. Now, let's talk about the coverage in South Africa now. After hearing that, Nozintombi, what do you think needs to be done in terms of delivering more awareness?
Well, I certainly think that we need to have more feature inserts, especially for newspapers. Yeah. And I think that television itself hasn't necessarily gone all out in terms of explaining what this Ebola virus is and how does it impact on a particular person who is infected. So I think that we certainly do need to get more information out there to the South African public to at least create that level of awareness.
Mm-hmm. All right. What do you think, Doctor? Government should work with media in terms of delivering all this vital information out to the public?
I think so, but I think that the part of the story that is not really being told is the decision of the World Health Organization around the medication. I think that there's a lot of that story. We've had small snippets. The vaccine is going to be made available. I don't understand the details, but I think for the process and time that it takes to get drugs to countries that are not the US, basically. I think there's a whole story there that's well worth understanding, and I'm sure the professor knows more about this.
Yes, Professor,
than I do.
absolutely,
but I think
Professor.
It's a story that needs telling.
Oh, absolutely, Professor, please go ahead.
Yeah, just to step back, I think there has been a lot of coverage for Ebola in the media, and I and my colleagues and a number of others have done really dozens and dozens of media interviews. I think it's the how it's received by the public. I mean, you can talk about there is no airborne spread, and people remember the Hollywood movie where there was a mutant Ebola virus, and that's what they remember. But, you know, that's something that we've said over and over again. How do you get it? How don't you get it? But there seems to be a lack of, I don't know, knowledge or just perception that's ongoing.
But Professor, now who is at the highest risk of contracting the virus? Explain to us how it spreads.
Well, here we go again. You can't get it from casual contact, being in the same room. It's not airborne, and it's really by having direct contact. You handle the blood, the body fluids, the organs of patients who are infected. So it's healthcare workers who are unprotected in that environment, or people looking after relatives at home who don't have any gloves or any kind of protection, or in the preparation of bodies for burial. So, you know, it's really that specific contact.
Let's go to Durban. Now, Vera, is the media probing whether or not the high number of foreigners coming into the country illegally is posing any risk at all?
I think I mentioned that previously as well, Alicia, that we're not having any information or communication with regards to illegal immigrants coming through, and I think that does pose, it is something that is of concern to the public, and we do have a number of immigrants coming through, illegal immigrants, should I say, and especially in KZN, and especially in our city of Durban. So it is a concern, a local concern, and obviously we have had issues of xenophobia, and we don't want that to happen again. And so the issue is very sensitive, but we do need communication from government.
Absolutely. Thank you
so much. And I think obviously the media to communicate.
Thank you so much, Vera. Now, Professor, before I let you go, what are the best precautions to consider? And is there enough info on the mainstream media? Where else can people go to get that information?
So we have a website, www.nicd.ac.za. We update it every day. We have a section that includes are there any suspected cases of Ebola being tested? Are there any confirmed cases? I think people really need to go to that instead of generating their own rumours that are totally unrelated. I think knowledge of geography is a little bit of a problem out there, sorry to say.
All right, thank you so much, Professor, for that. Well, before we take our break, let me thank our expert guest, Professor Lucille Bloomberg, Deputy Director at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases, informing us about the Ebola virus. Well, when we return, we're going to look at the media coverage of the Marikana massacre commemoration. You can still be part of our discussion by expressing your views as to which stories you think should have been covered by the media by calling us on +2 711 714 6843, 714 6847 and 714 6857. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor as well as on Facebook. Stay with us. This is Media Monitor.
An American-based foundation has donated 15 million rand for the construction of a clinic at Umlazi.
This facility that is going to be built here with a 15 million rand contribution from AHF is, among other things, going to actually help us to expand.
Itembaletu Clinic is the only clinic that caters solely for HIV patients. It accommodates 16,000 people.
Your world, weekdays between 11 and 12 midnight.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. You can still be part of our discussion by calling us on the numbers that will appear at the bottom of your screens or contact us on Facebook as well as Twitter. Yesterday marked the second anniversary of the death of 34 miners who were killed during the violent miners' wage strike in August 2012 in clash with the police in Marikana. Let's take a look at this clip.
It was this day when I understood better about what capitalism is all about. It was this day when I understand the brutality of capitalism. It was this day the fate of our brothers and their families were decided.
A lot that needs to be done still. I mean, it's a joke that if you look at where people are leaving, when they had promised that they would improve housing, all you see is shacks.
All right, now panel, second anniversary of the Marikana killings. The commission is still probing. How has the media treated the story, commission and commemoration?
I think that there's a little bit of confusion on the ground in terms of the public, not quite understanding where the commission fits in with the entire overview of the Marikana incident that had happened, or the tragedy that had happened. And I think that we need to do more as the media, perhaps, to ensure that we try and get people to understand that the commission is a process that is probing what happened 2 years ago, and that they are supposed to run concurrently with whatever it is that's happening on the ground in Marikana. So I certainly think that people need to start getting more of an understanding that the commission is a separate process, and that it is a process that's going to take a while. It's not going to happen overnight that we get answers, because everybody needs to have an opportunity to explain what happened and what role they played. So it is important that we get Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa on the stand. It's important that we get a former Minister in Resources, Susan Shabangu, on the stand. And it's important that we get Ria Pierre back on the stand again to probe and find out from them what was their role in ensuring that there was less bloodshed. But I mean, obviously, there was bloodshed. 34 miners were shot and killed yesterday, 2 years ago, and we need to find out from the police who gave the order to shoot live ammunition.
You know, it shocks me if a journalist is going to say, Doctor, that there's a certain confusion on the ground, which means that there's wide speculation across the media. What is your take, Doctor?
I think what would be very useful if the media could give the public an update on exactly how far the Commission is. That sense of it running parallel, I think, is absolutely correct. But as a member of the public, it's difficult to know when we say it's been going on for 2 years, is it on track? Isn't it on track? Is it falling behind? Because I think some of the public anxiety about a perception of a lack of progress is based exactly on that lack of information. It's not really clear to us, and I believe the media could help hugely. Is it as far as it's expected to be in 2 years or not? I really have no idea.
Just to give you clarity on that, the Commission was supposed to sit for 4 months.
Well,
it's been 18 months.
And is that bad? Is that good? Is it obfuscation?
That's the questions that we want to hear from the media. Absolutely, for them to answer. Vera, what are your views on this saga?
I think in terms of the media covering the Marikana Commission and the commemoration of the anniversary, I think it has been good. I think you know, we've had a lot of human stories. When I say human stories, we've heard the pain of the widows. We've had stories, you know, interviews with the families, and I think that's come out. You know, the human tragedy, and that for me has been, you know, a positive in terms of highlighting what a tragedy this has been in South Africa, in the democracy, and you know, just really highlighting that this should never happen again. And I think the media has done well in actually highlighting this in terms of these families and getting any compensation. I think, you know, we've had stories about, you know, the lack of obviously government obviously intervening and giving them any compensation. So we've had lots of stories about that, but also highlighting what it really is to live in Marikana. And it's not just highlighted what Marikana is, but also just mining in general in this country and what mine workers go through. So I think it's a very significant, and I think the media has done well in actually highlighting this. I do obviously think that we should be commemorating this day, you know, so that it'll never happen again, even more.
Now, Penna, has the media probed all the very compelling issues that have come out of the Commission as a follow-up? Let's start with you, Doctor.
I think that the commemoration story over the last week has, in a sense, drawn the two stories right back together, because it's brought... The thing that's disturbed me most then, I don't think it's the media coverage, is the opportunism around those human tragedies. So-and-so wasn't invited, an opportunity to have a go at another political party, another person, to repeat almost in some senses the testimony at the Commission running parallel now and becoming the story in the commemoration. And I just wonder about the lack of respect for those who are individual. I don't know that the commemoration is the place to be taking side swipes at political parties. I think the commemoration is the moment of focusing on the national tragedy and the people.
All right, thank you so much there, Doctor. Let's take Mazwi from Durban. Mazwi, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us on the show. Your comment, please.
Morning there.
Morning.
Yeah, thank you very much for the input of the Marikana issue. Unfortunately, I must apologize because my English is not so good.
Go ahead, sir.
Yes, but what I'd like to say, what I'd like to comment on is that the Marikana issue and the murder that took place, to me, it seems as if it's a very one-sided affair being covered by the media of those who were shot, but about the people that were shot prior to the about the people that were killed before the shooting, which was very gruesome, because one of those that were killed before the Marikana shooting is my relatives, who was brutally murdered by the same group that were marching. So to me, it seems as if it's what the police did, not how the people were murdered, because it's been covered though about the people being shot.
Thank you.
Yes, but
thank you so
what
much,
I'm not uncomfortable about is that the media no one has ever commented about the people carrying arms.
Thank you
and
so
these
much.
arms too, they were the arms that were used, and one of those people that were murdered prior to the shooting.
Okay, Mazu, thank you so much for your time. All right, Mazu, I have to cut you there. Thank you so much, and we're very sorry for your loss there, Mazu. Now, Nozintombi, do you want to comment on the one-sided media affair? I can see you there, Stevie. Please go ahead.
You know what? Thank you very much to Mazu for bringing up that particular point. I don't think it was a one-sided coverage. I think that on the ground, people will listen to what the media is distributing and identify with certain portions. It's easy to identify with a group of people who were killed, but it's not entirely true to say that the 10 people who had died prior to the 16th were not given enough coverage. Over several days this past week, the presiding judge, Ian Farlam, has had moments of silences for at least 3 days to honor those who had died in the preceding weeks. So to say that we have not given enough coverage to the 10 people who had died is not entirely true, and it's not entirely a fair criticism on the media. And I think that more needs to be done, certainly, to ensure that all 44 people who had died are commemorated. And it's not just about 34 who were killed on the 16th, because 44 people lost their lives in that particular week.
Thank you so much. Well, there you have it from our very own journalist. Well, stay tuned, because when we return, we're going to be discussing the coverage of the spy tapes case, as well as the Pantsitlakule's court ruling. You can still call us on +2 711 714 6847, 714 6843, 714 6857. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor, as well as on Facebook. Don't go anywhere.
Zoom into Africa. This is Comoros. The president is Mr. Ikilulu Dwanine. Comoros got independent from France on 6 July in 1975. The population is over 700,000 people. One of the major languages spoken is French. Monetary unit is the Comoran franc.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. You can still be part of our discussion by contacting us on the numbers that will appear at the bottom of your screens, not forgetting Facebook as well as Twitter. In our next story, judgment has been reserved in the appeal against the release of the so-called spy tapes. The Supreme Court of Appeal has given President Jacob Zuma and the Democratic Alliance a week in which to try to reach a settlement over the so-called spy tapes. Let's go to Durban. Vera, this has been a week-long top story. Please give me your views on this story.
Alicia, it has been a top story. However, it hasn't had much coverage here in Durban, I have to be honest. We've had a lead story yesterday, but it hasn't really been much of a story here. I think a lot of the headlines this week was really about President Zuma's response, I think, to the Special Investigations Unit, in terms of the Nkandla report. But in terms of the spy tapes, that came out like on Thursday. And this has been a story, obviously, from 2009 and then in August last year. So it has been it's an ongoing story. And I think that, it really hasn't been given the headlines here in Durban. So I think in a media's perspective, I think the public really needs to know, or actually needs to be refreshed in terms of where everything is in terms of the obviously alleged spy tapes. Because it does get, the story does get a little bit confusing, I think, for the general public.
Very interesting indeed, the fact that there's not adequate coverage or equal coverage across the whole country. What do you think, Doctor?
I think this is one of the places in which the media is actually doing us a favor, because they haven't responded to the fatigue. It may not be equal across the country, but the media haven't let it go. And even if they're not able to get the wide national coverage that this seminal moment actually deserves, they haven't let it go. And after 5 years of this process, it must be very tempting to just let it slide behind some of the other more dramatic stories.
Zintombi, what are your views?
Well, undoubtedly, as the media, I think we need to be extremely careful how we cover the story. The president's response this week has been particularly curious, and I think it's a wait-and-see game. The public has a right to know what is contained on those spy tapes. And up until those spy tapes are released, I think it's going to be very difficult for us to cover it, because we don't want to get embroiled in a he said, she said fight between Helen Zille and the presidency. So it really is a wait-and-see game at the moment.
Very interesting indeed. Let's take Tsidiso from Soweto. Tsidiso, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please.
And may the soul of those who passed on that tragic tragedy at Marikana rest in peace, and may their family be really consoled by the Almighty God.
Thank you, Tsidiso.
Having said that, Alicia, let me just make one point. And the point that I want to make is that the coverage has been, to some extent, fair, but I believe all those that have been named from the first day were supposed to have been arranged something of a particular last respect in a form of the same thing that has happened yesterday. Because people were named, there are days that are known before this one, where police and these striking workers confronted each other. And again, I think one thing that I would want to raise is what appears to be a terrible political opportunistic by the people who will want to claim popularity at the expense of the dead people at Marikana. And I think Africans should really look at themselves, more especially politicians. We wouldn't be really very much interested in hearing people, instead of consoling the families, wanting to popularize themselves and wanting to push their political agenda against the ruling party. If you are a leader, you must work and do things that will always be helping you the time you have won and become a governor. I believe these political parties are highly opportunistic, and that is unfortunate.
All right. Thank you so much. That's Tsidiso giving us his viewpoint right here on Media Monitor. Well, let's move on to our next story now. Opposition parties have welcomed the Constitutional Court ruling dismissing IEC Chairperson Banzi Tlakule's application for leave to appeal against an electoral court ruling against her. In a Constitutional Court papers, Tlakule claimed the electoral court erred in its finding and that its procedures were unfair. Let's take a look at this short insert.
Lesson learned from here is that the ruling party needs to be serious when they say they are fighting corruption, because they were hell-bent on discrediting the independent institutions in this country, like the public protector, by wanting to shield Pensi Tlakula. The best thing for Pensi Tlakula would be to simply resign.
The court has made a final decision, and I think that is the end of the matter. But it still has to go to Parliament in terms of the removal. The court cannot remove her from that office. So the process of removal will have to proceed at this particular stage.
Vera, what are your views on how the media has covered this story, particularly in Durban?
I think the media, once again, I have to say, there wasn't much about the story over the week. And obviously, it is such an important story that needed to be covered. And it also, it's about accountability. And I think in terms of the media, we should be highlighting the story on a greater depth.
What are your views, panel, Doctor?
I'm delighted that this has been dealt with so quickly and so clearly, and that is reflected in the media coverage. It's clean, it's happened, it's been dealt with. It may not go away, but it's so refreshing to see in some process that started and ended. There's an outcome. I think that's worth celebrating, in a sense, no matter what happens next.
All right, let me take Zig from Randburg. Zig, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please.
Good morning. I'm very sorry about the shallow reporting that we have. It's live TV, but we have our deputy president being massacred on TV, and because of a lousy defense by Unterhalter. Would you believe it? I mean, he never apologized properly. He should have, for the horrible stuff that's been going on for them, giving living out allowances instead of, yes, accommodating them in hostels where they should be, in decent hostels, instead of living in slums. But Ramaphosa let this happen, and he should have apologized, indeed. But he was not the guy who made the massacre happen. I think the guys who made the massacre happen were the guys who instigated the whole thing by claiming that there was a 12,500 wage which was affordable, and which now 2 years later has been totally proved to have been unaffordable all along. And these guys were foreign socialists who were sitting in universities in South Africa and who claimed that this that the wage, which would have made hundreds of thousands of people unemployed, that this wage was affordable, they claimed. And this is the people who probably hired the Sangoma, who allowed Muti murders to take place so that they could incite these people to charge the police.
All right, thank you so much, Zig.
Bulletproof.
All right, thank you so much, Zig, for your profound view. I think this whole issue, Nozintombi of Marikana, is quite sensitive, and you can hear it coming through from our callers. What do you make of this? You're covering this story for us.
Undoubtedly, I think that the nation has been touched by the deaths of all 44 people. And I think that as a criticism, as an individual who is a journalist as well, who has been on the ground, government has not played the part that they should have played. And they needed to step up, go onto the ground, speak to the widowers, and speak to all the people there. However, the new minister of minerals resources, he's done so much to ensure that the strike itself was resolved, this recent strike. So that is a fantastic thing that government has done, but they needed to follow up on that. We needed to have the president going to Marikana yesterday and spearheading the 2-year anniversary. Undoubtedly, that's uncompromisable. That's what he should have done. He should not have released a statement. And it's unfortunate because the entire nation is watching to see what government is going to do on the ground with these people in Marikana.
With that said, Nozintombi, what is your take on the Banzitlakula coverage in the media?
Well, I think that we've been overtaken by the Marikana situation. But I think that we have certainly covered the Banzitlakula situation to the best of our ability. It's so unfortunate that it's happened in the way that it has, because it reminds us again of Dina Pule. But I think that all we can do really as the media is follow the processes as they unfold and cover it to the best of our abilities, I think.
But what do you make of the fact that it also didn't make news in Durban, Doctor?
Well, I'm sure it wasn't that big a news here in all of the media. So I'd hate to get myself in trouble with Durban media.
I'd like to know, actually. I'd like to know, what made news in Durban this week?
Absolutely. Vera, please answer that for us. What made news in Durban this week?
Well, you know, the Durban media like to focus on stories that relate to people in Durban, and a lot of the you know, that's why the focus goes on something that's local, even if it is like a headline story like today regarding the Gupta Gate, but obviously because the person lives in KZN, the story made headlines.
All right.
You know, so it's a community where people like to hear stories about people in KZN, kind of thing. So I think that you know, that's why a story some stories that make news in Gauteng and the rest of the country doesn't always make headline news in Durban. So I think that's the reason.
All right. Well, thank you so much. There you heard it, Nozintombi. They focus on themselves. The Durban people love themselves. Well, we're going to take a very quick ad break, and after that, I'll get to read your tweets. And we'll also hear from our panel as to which stories they think will be making headlines this coming week. Share your views and comments on Twitter at SA Media Monitor as well as on Facebook. We'll be back shortly after this.
Zoom into Africa. This is Seychelles. The president is Mr. James Michel James. Seychelles got independent from United Kingdom on 29 June in 1976. The population is over 80,000 people. One of the major languages spoken is English. Monetary unit is the Seychelles rupee.
Welcome back to our final segment right here on Media Monitor. Before I read our tweets, let's take our caller Lungelo from Ekhayelitsha. Lungelo, very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us. Your comment, please.
Morning, my angel. How are you?
Morning. We're very well. Thank you, Lungelo. Please go ahead with your comment.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to comment on two issues here. The first issue of Princess Sakula. I think the easiest thing that Princess Sakula should do is to basically learn from Paulo Jordan and just resign. That's the first thing that she must do. And then coming now to the Marikana issue, I would like to correct the previous caller who basically called in here. First of all, it has been proven by people who have come in here in previous discussion, like the question time and all of the people who are experts who are dealing in the mining issue. There is money in the mining. There is a lot of money that people must be paid. And then, first of all, what I'd like to go through is that the people who are responsible for the Marikana massacre are government in particular. They should take note of that, and then they should accept it, then they should apologize to the public. That is all.
Thank you so much.
Ramaphosa is worth about 7 billion.
All right, Lungelo, you've made your point. Thank you so much. I have to read tweets, unfortunately. Thank you so much, Lungelo, out in Ekhayelitsha. This issue is very sensitive, Nozintombi. Anyway, let's take some of the tweets that our loyal viewers have, of course, sent to us today. Let's see what some of you have written to us. TK Malela said, and one major question is, can we treat this in South Africa? Are we medically qualified to deal with it, seeing it kills even doctors? Thank you so much, TK Malela. Christian Marxist says, we love our fellow Africans, but they cannot be allowed to come into South Africa. Ebola is so fatal, we can't risk it. All right, Christian is worried about, our safety. John S. Jackson says Ebola has been there for 30 years. They had a chance to prepare, monitor the disease, and build a mobile mortuary. Instead, fight a war. Reverend T.D. Shezi says it is humiliating that these women have not been accorded respect and closure so they can heal and move on. Of course, on the Marikana issue, then Julian van Heerden says the people responsible should compensate loved ones. Corporates literally get away with murder. Let's take the Rasta Party. Last but not least, the spy tapes are not for the public. People must learn that governments have a job to do. Well, thank you very much to all our loyal viewers and their comments. Their panel, what do you think is going to be in the news headlines this week? Let's start with you, Doctor.
Well, I think the one that sneaked in at the end of the week that's not going to come up in the next week but come up soon is the whole Shrin Diwani finding. So I think that probably over the next 2 or 3 months or so is going to start drawing a bit more attention. But it's going to be Ebola, Marikana,
All right, very quickly.
And hopefully the spy tapes.
All right.
I concur definitely with the doctor. Definitely Ebola, the spy tapes, and from so much public sentiment, undoubtedly the Marikana.
Thank you so much. And of course, Vera, what do you think will be in the headlines this week? Very quickly.
Yes, I think Parliament's response to President Jacob Zuma's report, as well as Ebola, Shin Diwani, obviously that case as well, and the crisis in Iraq, obviously, and the ongoing, obviously, news story on Gaza.
Hopefully they'll also make headlines in Durban. Thank you so much there, Vera. Well, thank you so much, panel, for sharing the moment with us this morning. Our viewers' contributions and suggestions is highly valued. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at SA Media Monitor. Share your views and comments on Facebook. Go to www.facebook.com/Media Monitor and like our page. You can email us your views about the show at mediamonitor@sabc.co.za. Thank you so much for watching Media Monitor today. Join us next week, and in case you missed our live show, remember you can still catch the repeat on Monday morning at 2 a.m. For myself, Alicia Jali, and the rest of the QTIV team, have yourself a blessed Sunday, and to all the women out there, we hope that you are still enjoying Women's Month. Goodbye.